Wise person, one of my spiritual directors in seminary, taught me to have a very soft and generous heart when it came to the disciples. I mean, the disciples do interesting things we have to sit back and look at, maybe scratch your head every now and then. Like, say, think the experience of Peter, the rock upon whom Jesus builds the church. Peter denies Jesus 3 times before the cock crows. And wouldn't you know that Jesus forgave Peter in the midst of all that? Just just in last week's gospel, another one of the disciples, John, the beloved disciple no less, he kind of comes up to Jesus and he's excited because there's someone who is not part of the group of the 12 who's out there teaching in Jesus' name, and he wants Jesus to disavow him and just make him stop. And Jesus just talks to John and gets him to relax a little bit, that how could anyone who is doing good in my name be doing evil? And we have the experience today. James and John. John pops up again. James and John. They're approaching Jesus. Now, in Mark's gospel, they've been walking with Jesus for some time now. And perhaps the disciples, we can forgive them. They want to know what's going on. They're hanging out with Jesus. Maybe some of them are thinking there's more in this for them than what meets the eye. Maybe James and John have in mind that Jesus is someone we should follow because Jesus is going places. We'll go with him. And maybe we'll end up with good places, like one at my left and one at my right, when you come into your glory. Now we can sit back and say, wow, that sounds awfully shallow, doesn't it? Hang out with Jesus because you want glory and advancement. But then again, let's be realistic. Look at the lives we live. We have responsibilities. We have to put food on the table for ourselves and for others, right? Roof over the head. Maybe put like a couple of chestnuts away for the future, for retirement. That's not a bad thing to do. Put in perspective, doing good things for the people we love sometimes involve making sacrifices so they can all prosper. How many times have grandparents said we want life better for our children or grandchildren than we had ourselves? What's wrong with that thinking with James and John in mind? Maybe we'll take care of our mother while we're at it. Oh, by the way, in Matthew's gospel, when this particular story pops up, it's James and John's mother who's actually asking Jesus, what can you do for my sons? What can I say? Must be a parable of nepotism on a nice fall day. But aside from that, let's keep in mind that James and John very reasonably are looking at this and probably thinking a little bit like, what's in this for me? It was the way of their time. It's the way of our time too. And let's be fair. Following Jesus is not necessarily like walking up the ladder to better things. Eternal life, yes, absolutely. But Jesus is not necessarily talking about the kinds of advancement that we like to think about. If anything, Jesus is talking about, say, the trip down into the cellar. Okay? What's Jesus doing? Hey, he's having meals with prostitutes and with tax collectors. He's with the lepers. He's healing the sick. He's restoring sight to the blind and curing the deaf and the mute. Jesus is with a lot of people who a lot of people avoid. Okay? And where am I going with this? Well, Jesus has taken the disciples together and to say, those who wish to be with me must know that being a servant is important. You're going to be a servant of all and the slave of all. It doesn't sound very exalted. But then again, look at Jesus. I mean, he was born in a stable. He's not wearing wonderful clothes. His divinity, he's not flouting among the people, is he? Jesus isn't talking about accumulating riches. And as beloved as Jesus is, how much is he accepting from people? Yeah. Jesus is talking about what can we do to be the servants of all. I mean, when the two disciples there, the brothers, James and John, asked Jesus, we can follow you. Can you drink the cup I drink from? Oh, sure, yeah. Well, that cup has suffering in it. That cup has sacrifice in it. Are you ready to do that? Well, let me think about that a little bit first. Jesus is calling us, through the experience of the disciples today, to think a little bit about the priorities in our lives. Do we do the things we do for the people we love and care for them? Absolutely. But are we also attuned to the world in which we live? And to think about the ways in which we are called to hear our sisters and brothers and to respond to their neediness and their brokenness? Absolutely. Underline it twice. So we think about all these things. Maybe there are some people who think a little bit about where the seats of glory are, like where John and James were going. Maybe they thought about this as something that's going to happen at some point in the future. maybe the real seats of glory are right here and now. And the experience of, say, just what does it mean for us to be people who look for chances to exercise love, mercy, charity, forgiveness, understanding, patience, helping to make gospel virtues come alive. That's in the here and now, too. May we think a little bit about, say, just what it means for us to be people who are ready to follow Jesus in every sense of the word.